where those nuclear talks with Iran have completed a nuclear deal. That's where Chief International Correspondent Christiane Amanpour joins us right now. Good morning, Christiane. Such a busy morning, and now here at the final hour of these negotiations, minutes away from the final plenary session. What are diplomats telling you, Christiane?
Well, Christine, you can imagine that the atmosphere here is completely different to the atmosphere that Erin was reporting from Jerusalem. Of course, there are very big fears from the Israeli side, and most diplomats here know that the next phase will be almost tougher than these last 2 years of negotiations. In other words, selling the deal and making it clear that this deal, as they say here, is a win-win situation for all sides. Remember, it's not just Iran and the United States, it's Iran plus all the European world powers and plus China and Russia. Diplomats point out that having that kind of negotiation over more than 22 months with the world powers means that there has been, as they say, a lot of progress and that it's a good deal for all sides. An Iranian official today told me and some other reporters that this is a historic day. This is a good day for world peace. Now, we're not bringing out the details yet. There's a lot that's still under embargo until the officials make the final statement at the press conference, and we expect to hear from the EU chief, Federica Mogherini, standing alongside the Iranian chief negotiator, Foreign Minister Javad Zarif, laying out exactly what has happened, and then we'll hear from the U.S. Secretary of State, John Kerry. And then we will have, very similar to what happened in Lausanne at the beginning of April when it was the interim and framework accord announced, we will have the documents, the details, the papers of all that has been agreed made public. And remember, this, we're told, is either 100 to 80 pages long with at least half of that as annexes. It is incredibly complicated. The one thing we do know for sure, because the IAE chief, Mr. Amano, has said that this morning, is that he has signed a deal, an agreement, and the papers with his Iranian counterpart, or rather with the Iranian chief of the atomic agency there, Mr. Salehi, to have a roadmap to exploring and investigating and finally coming to terms with what Iran may have done in the past. This is a deal that's been signed about one crucial issue in this whole negotiation, what Iran may or may not have done in the past regarding military nuclear activity. And the Iranians are saying that, and so is Chief Amano saying that they've signed that roadmap, and that is part of this deal. Christine?
We talk about selling this in the U.S. too. There's also this sticking point of selling arms to Iran, lifting an embargo against selling arms to Iran, Christiane. Selling arms to Iran, a country that is at odds with the U.S. in some of the most dangerous places in the world via Hamas and Hezbollah. What do we know about that?
Well, that has been, and we've been reporting this, one of the crucial and tricky issues in the last few days. This was part of the original framework agreement, the idea of the arms embargo that exists under the United Nations on Iran. Now, we can't tell you the details right now, but we understand that that has been resolved in a sort of progressive and timed manner, and we will be able to tell you that and those specific details later on. But that apparently has been resolved. The crucial issue over the last few days, as I reported yesterday, was the text and the framework of the new United Nations resolution that will enshrine everything that's happened in these discussions over the last 2.5 years. In other words, Iran is under a very strict UN embargo, UN sanctions, as well as all the other unilateral US and other European sanctions. But the very tough ones have been in the UN Security Council resolution, and now a new resolution has to be drafted and apparently has been worked out. That's why a deal has been reached to enshrine this process going forward. So it's basically limitations on Iran's nuclear capability for a period of 10 to 25 years, depending on which aspects we're talking about, in return for lifting of the sanctions and in return for movement on the arms embargo.
Remarkable. All right, Christiane Amanpour, we know you're working your sources, talking to diplomats, and the time ticking down here, another 6.5 minutes until this plenary session begins. Christiane in Vienna, thank you. The nuclear deal with Iran will have a major impact on the price of oil and markets around the world. We're going to break that all down.
and particularly in these last 17 days, with one deadline after the next being rolled over, that they have crossed every T and dotted every I to make sure, in their words, that this is a good deal for all sides. We already see the Iranian president has tweeted, because one of the first public acts today was the statement by the IAEA chief. Now, he is the head of the UN's nuclear watchdog agency, and his agency is in charge of inspections and, most crucially, not just going forward, but going back to the past. And today they signed an agreement here, and this took a long time to hammer out on what he called a roadmap to trying to figure out what, if anything, Iran did in the past that may have had a nuclear military component. So they say they are looking at that. Iran says we never did and we never will. But of course that is the basis of all the suspicion. So that's the one thing. There was meant to be a plenary meeting of all the leaders here taking place right now. It may have been slightly delayed, but that is what they're meant to be doing, followed by public statements and announcements of what is happening. A key Iranian official said this morning that this is a historic day, this is a good day for world peace. Separately, an Iranian source tells me that no matter what happens once they've announced this and once it's all in the open and all public, nothing actually will be implemented for another 90 days. Part of that is because, of course, US Congress has 60 days to review this. So all of this is going step by step by step. But in general, all sides believe that the culmination of not just 2 years of negotiating, Christine, but this actually has been more than 10 years. And it was started under the Bush administration when the idea of sanctions relief for limiting Iran's nuclear program was first raised. And it's taken all this time through the bad days of the Ahmadinejad regime in Iran, where nothing positive happened whatsoever, to the election of President Hassan Rouhani in Iran and the empowerment by the Iran supreme leader to allow these negotiations to take place. It's been a very, very long process, one that I started covering more than 10 years ago. Christine?
So interesting. All right, Christiana, we're going to get the guts of that agreement any moment, really, and be able to look into all 180 pages with all the appendices there. Thank you so much for that, Christiane. This nuclear deal with Iran, it will have a huge